it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal. Today's May 10th. I've already covered today's anniversary, a criminal abortion death, and I'll link to it below. But I want to look at a more recent news story. It's about a botched execution, and I just find the news coverage very interesting. Mikhail Mahid admitted to killing an off-duty police officer in 2004. On April 11th, 2025, he was executed by firing squad, and he chose this execution method himself, rejecting the electric chair or lethal injection. His legal team filed a complaint that the execution was botched. Only 2 of the 3 bullets struck him, and struck him in such a way as to prolong his death. This, his attorneys asserted, constituted cruel and unusual punishment. According to a 2024 state Supreme Court ruling, the amount of time a person would be expected to remain conscious after being shot in the heart is no longer than 15 seconds. There has been intense scrutiny into this botched execution, with lawyers, medical examiners, and advocacy groups demanding to know why this admitted murderer didn't get a more swift and merciful end. A witness from the Associated Press wrote that Mahdi cried out as the shots hit him and his arms flexed. The report went on to say he groaned 2 more times about 45 seconds after that. His breath continued for about 80 seconds before he appeared to take one final breath. His attorney, David Weiss, said, "The implications are horrifying for anyone facing the same choice as Mikhail." Your client was only facing that choice because of previous choices he made. This lavishly abundant coverage of this execution doesn't even mention the man he was executed for killing or the other man he killed, Christopher Boggs and James Myers. And I had to really look to find information about these men. And I couldn't even find a picture of either victim. The media just don't care. Christopher Boggs was a 29-year-old clerk in a convenience store. Mahdi, who was then 21 years old, entered the convenience store and took a can of beer to the checkout. And while Christopher was checking the ID, Mahdi shot him point blank in the face, then put another bullet in him after he collapsed onto the floor. I can find no news coverage expressing any concern over how much Christopher Boggs suffered as his life was taken from him when the only crime he committed was working for a living. Then, while he was on the run for murdering Christopher Boggs, Mahdi decided to relax on a family farm owned by 56-year-old off-duty police officer James Myers. This innocent man was at the beach with his wife, daughter, and sister having a family celebration when this fleeing murderer decided to chill on his property. When he returned to the farm, Mahdi spotted him and shot him 9 times, then covered his body with diesel fuel and set it on fire. And again, the press shows absolutely no interest in the suffering James Myers went through as he was executed for the crime of walking onto his own property. But, we'll say they're not, the media doesn't get fussy about how victims die. They're only worried about legal killings. When it's legal to kill the person, you must do it mercifully. So let's look at a legal execution. The execution of Sarah Brown in Kansas during the summer of 1993. She received 2 injections of potassium chloride directly into her brain, but they were unsuccessful in causing her death. She was expelled from her mother's body, wrapped in a blanket, and left unattended for 24 hours before a nurse intervened and decided that she should be provided with care. Sarah was severely brain injured, lost her vision, and would never walk or talk. She died 5 years later. What crime had she committed that justified that? Don't even look at the fact that this little girl took 5 years to die after she was born. How about the 24 hours this baby was left cold and alone in an abortion clinic. I mean, like Christopher Boggs and James Myers, it was simply a matter of she had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. She just had the bad fortune of being in the womb of a mother who chose an abortion at 36 weeks. Remember, we're supposed to believe these abortions don't happen? Using her mother's age, she was just 15 years old, George Tiller proclaimed the death of Sarah to be vital to preserving her mother's health. Couldn't wait 4 more weeks and then place the baby for adoption. You had to stick a needle straight into her brain and pump it full of potassium chloride. And oops, that didn't kill her on the first try. Try it again. And then leave her just wrapped in a towel for 24 hours, gasping for breath. There was no public outcry over this botched execution. There were no hearings to determine if it was okay to continue to do this to other viable unborn babies. You know, it just boggles the mind that what was done to little Sarah Brown is something to celebrate. It's something to celebrate. We weren't supposed to be mad. It was just a little easy-peasy mix-up on Tiller's part. And, you know, they'd probably argue that the nurse should have strangled the baby instead of sending her to the hospital. You know, why is it that when it takes 80 seconds for a convicted murderer to die, it's like, oh, this cruelty, we cannot tolerate it. But when this baby gets 2 injections into her brain, then when she comes out, they just leave her lying there cold and alone for 24 hours before she gets any care. And she only survives 5 years after that. That is a good and beautiful thing that we should be embracing. It was her mother's right to do that. That the only wrong that was done in Sarah Brown's case was that they didn't just cut her open and harvest her organs. This is a sick society we live in, and I would like somebody to explain it to me. The left loves the guilty and hate the innocent.